Hi everyone. So it's been a really long time since I put a well thought video on my YouTube channel. The last two videos I put up were kind of just me being lazy and talking about my day and like my random in the moment tips on how I got through life without parents. But I didn't put much effort into it. That was just my very brief, very not well thought out advice for someone that might not have parents and everything. I made a little bit of an outline to help me kind of construct an idea of how to do this video. So I wanted to start with talking about something that happened to me a long time ago to really get my channel going, because the whole reason I wanted to make this channel in the first place was to do things that I love. Like I want to do hauls, I want to do like get ready with me, I want to do so many things that I'm interested in, but I also want to be an inspiration to people and I want to put myself out there. But at the same time, it's like really it's hard to do. It's really hard for me to open up, especially to a camera. So this is, yeah, that can be difficult. But I kind of wanted to share an experience that happened to me, one of my very first experiences, which, judging by the title, you'll see how I have lived through abuse, and I was actually in the foster care system when I was younger. And it's like memories I don't really like talking about, but I mean, even though that happened years ago, it still affects me on a regular basis, because things that happen to you in your life always play an impact in your future, and even though it's in the past, and it's not always what you like to think of it, but it's true. Like when I'm sad or when I'm feeling angry for no reason, it's more deep rooted than just I'm mad that someone didn't text me back. It's abandonment issues that kind of come out, and I do my best to control that. And everyone says that I'm so strong and that I really am the most genuine person that they've ever known, and I like to think of myself that way. But there are times when I just find myself, like, if a friend says something that's kind of annoying, like her complaining about her mom or her dad, it's just like I kind of have this little like, well, at least your mom is there, and like it's a little bit of annoyance and anger towards them, and sometimes jealousy towards their normal life. And that's all good, that's all natural feelings, but sometimes like you have to realize you can't let that affect you. And I feel like if I talked to a therapist, then I wouldn't probably have like misplaced anger and stuff. And I do like I said, I really do my best to evaluate myself, but not a lot of people can do that. And my major in college was behavioral science, so I really have a lot of psychology and a lot of sociology, so like knowledge, because that was what I studied in college. And you know, so I kind of can do my own self-evaluating, but not a lot of people can do that, because you know, you don't really think of things unless you kind of have the book knowledge or you speak to someone with a lot of book knowledge about it. But anyway, so moving along to the video that the title's about. So yeah, so this is a story time about my foster care experience and why I ended up in foster care, basically. So before I start, I'm just gonna do a brief talk about my parents at that time, because it's kind of confusing. So my dad and my dad's side of the family is actually from Louisiana. My mom is from Ohio, and so my mom went to college in Louisiana and she met my dad. She got pregnant in college, and then my grandma in Ohio got diagnosed with cancer. So my mom wanted to move to Ohio. My dad moved to Ohio too. He already had kids here, so in Louisiana, I live in Louisiana now. So he already had kids in Louisiana. So he kind of like left his whole life for us, so it was kind of like really other family. Yeah, and that's a whole nother story for itself, but that's not the case. But so he was living with us for a little bit. He loved it in Ohio. He loved the nursing environment, but like I have the best memories of my dad living there. He was there from like 1 to 5, and then when I was 5 years old, my mom started cheating. And she started cheating on him with a man who was a motorcyclist, and no offense to motorcyclists, but he was like kind of a bad motorcyclist. Like he hung out with people who did drugs and everything. So like, you know, she should have known from the get-go. Like he already had a bad reputation in my small town in Ohio of being the town drunk and causing fights. And he was actually in prison before my mom dated him for theft for an armed robbery actually. So yeah, good choice of men. Anyway, so she went to the beach with him or something like that for 2 weeks and left my dad with me. And me and my dad were fine, but my dad knew something was up and he had like some issues with that, and they got into a big fight. And apparently the guy who my mom ended up dating would like do things like stalk my dad at work and like try to run him off the road. I don't know how that would how that happened, but my dad told me stories of that as I got older. And so he just kind of felt uncomfortable. Like the whole reason he moved there was for me and my mom, and of course he didn't want to leave me. And so my dad kind of gave my mom an ultimatum. She was like, it's either me or him, and I will stay with you if you choose me. And so my mom chose the other guy. So my dad moved back to Louisiana to be with his other family, and he never made it, he never forgot about me. He always sent me stuff every Christmas, every birthday. He called and did whatever he could to show that he loves me. So yeah, like even though this is about to get dark and ugly, I knew I had people that loved me still. So fast forward to my life with the stepdad. Yeah, there was a lot of drugs involved. Like looking back, I know that they were doing meth and cocaine, and you know, taking care of a kid while you're doing that is probably not the wisest choice, especially when they would leave me home alone. And I can remember coming home from school and nobody being home, and just like, okay, like I'll make myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like I would get off the bus and walk to my apartment by myself. Like it's so bad thinking about this. And I was actually talking to my boyfriend earlier about a time that I was 5. I was 5 years old. I like walked to a creek by myself, and this town in Ohio is, it's like the outer of Columbus. It's outside of Columbus. So many things could have happened. Like there's so many people, like it's a busy area. And I remember I was swimming in the creek in my little bathing suit and my little rain boots, just having fun in a creek, which is, by the way, probably full of bacteria, because there was, it wasn't a sewer, but there was, like drains that would go through it. So like when it would rain and stuff, it would really fill up. But still, like anything could happen. I was 5 years old and I was just swimming in a creek by myself. And there was many nights where he would get abusive towards my mom. Like seeing him hit her was pretty much natural. And like sometimes it would get so bad she would be bleeding, or he would like be pulling her hair. And like being little and witnessing that, like it just kind of breaks my heart to think about. And like there was one night in particular where I really don't know what was gonna happen this night, because this was not too long after that I ended up in foster care. He came home. I don't know what they were fighting over, because I was a little girl and I kind of like to block these memories, but I do have this memory because I was horrified. I was in the bathtub, probably bathing myself, because you know I was full of neglectful parents at that time. And my mom comes running in the bathroom and she's screaming and crying, and she's on the phone, and I think she's calling the police. Again, I don't know, because I was 5 or 5, 6. And so like she's like on the phone and she's crying and she's locking the door, and all of a sudden I see a knife underneath the bathroom door. And I'm pretty sure the police came, and it was a domestic violence incident, and I ended up staying with my grandparents for a while. And then they realized that there was drugs involved, and I wasn't molested, but there were some situations that could be misinterpreted as molestation. Like he would get in the tub with me when I was little. And to me, looking back on that, that's so weird. Like I get it, like that might be a thing if that's your actual kid, but that's just, if that's not your kid, I don't think you should ever do that. And especially if you're a grown man with a little girl. Like I didn't know what a pee-pee was at that time, but like thinking back on that, like that's just a weird, uneasy feeling that I have. And like I would remember sometimes he'd tell me to cuddle with him and he'd be naked underneath the covers. So there was just so many things that happened that are just like a gray area. Again, he never touched me in any areas, but there was situations where he made me feel uncomfortable, and he would do things that were uncomfortable, but I didn't really know at that time because I was so little. But anyway, with all the domestic violence, the drug use, and the reputation, I ended up in the foster care system. And I can remember my aunt gave me a little bear, and my biological aunt, and she told me to just squeeze tight if I was ever scared. When I was in the foster care system, I was with a family with a bunch of kids. Nothing crazy really happened in there, besides the fact that they made me cry in Kmart, telling me I would never see my family again. And that was pretty traumatizing when you're 6 years old. Like, I honestly didn't know what the heck was going on, because I'm just like, okay, I'm living with this random family. And I lived with this random family for about a month, I would say, because I remember going to summer camp every day, being so excited. And I actually met a friend in summer camp, and her mom, like, I can remember me telling her that I don't live with my mommy and daddy anymore, and her mom being like, oh, that's so, like, I could just, like, looking back at it, I feel like this girl's mom's heart was broken. And like I ran into her eventually, like, years later at a dentist's office, and she was like, oh, like, I'm so glad you're, like, healthy and happy and all that stuff. So that was interesting. But yeah, so, like, I was literally a foster kid, and I was just getting through life, I guess. So I was still in the foster care system for about 3 years, but the abusive man who my mom was with, that she decided not to leave, and I ended up in foster care because she didn't want to leave him. We're gonna just call him Joe. Joe had a sister named Mary. Not really Mary, but I'm just using different names. And Mary was so loving and so caring to me. She actually was the one who ended up taking me in, and she's like a saint. Like, I don't understand how this man is related to this woman, because she's helped me with so much, and I think she's the reason why I have a good head on my shoulders. So I lived with her for about 3 years, I would say. I could be wrong, but I was little at that time, so I don't really know, and it was a long time. And she never yelled at me once. She always did things that were normal, and I never had any I did have a little bit of normalcy with my dad, but when my mom, like, majority of my life at that time, like, or not majority of my life, but for the past few years of my life, it was everything besides normal. So she showed me what normal was. Like, we'd have family dinners, like, we'd talk, we'd pray, and, like, we'd go to church every Sunday. And I remember she said there's only one thing I ever did that made her mad, and I didn't want to brush my hair. So she was just kind of like, you gotta brush your hair before you go to school. And I just, like, was like, ugh. I was like 7 or 8. I am in a different location. This video has been very hard for me to film, between people walking by my window and seeing me filming. It was so embarrassing. To losing light, because, you know, this took a lot longer than I anticipated. But so yeah, bear with me. Where I left off, I was talking about my experience with my aunt at the time, who I call my aunt. And to say that I went from a home of abuse and neglect to a home where the worst incident we had was me brushing my hair, I was very blessed while I was in foster care, because sometimes people experience no improvement when they end up in the system, the foster care system. So yeah, I was super blessed in that aspect of it. She still plays a significant role in my life. Every Christmas and every birthday I get a card and I get money, and I don't ask for it, but she just gives it to me because she loves me, and to me that means so much to me. But yeah, and then I lived with my grandparents when I was a teenager, and I wasn't getting the proper care that I needed. I was still getting, like, food, and I was still, like, watched over, but there was a lot of verbal abuse that just kind of tore my self-esteem to pieces. I had no self-confidence, and my mental illness at the time wasn't being taken care of, and it just kind of made life very hard. So I love my grandparents, but they were older, they were ready to retire, and they kind of hung that over my head. And so the second I turned 18, I moved to Louisiana to be with my dad, and that was the best decision I ever made. I made so many great friends here, and me and my dad had a bond before he passed away that I could never be grateful enough. And I feel like everything happens for a reason. I feel like I've gone through the things I've gone through to impact others, to influence others, and to just reach out to people and be that much more compassionate. But yeah, this was my journey, and please let me know if you've gone through something similar, or if I was any type of insight to you at all. Surround yourself with people that love you, and always count your blessings. Bye, everyone.